Roll Tide. I mean, is that the requisite way to start the show this afternoon?
Seems like the draft's that way lately.
Yeah, that's true, too.
30-second franchise.
Reuben Foster, he is going to join us coming up right here on NFL Insiders. And yes, all the draft talk and the way the tide will shift between now and Thursday night when it gets going. Bill Polian, Mark Dominic, Dan Graziano. I'm Jade McCarthy. Great to have you with us. Let's start, though, with Adrian Peterson, which once we knew Minnesota was an option, the question became where was the option for Adrian Peterson? Well, today we get an answer there. New Orleans is the answer. Peterson telling our Josina Anderson he plans to sign a 2-year deal with the Saints, essentially a 1-year deal with an option. Says it's $7 million, 3.5 guaranteed. Saints, of course, they've been kicking the tires on that running back market. They have a number 1 running back in Mark Ingram. He's under contract for 2 more years. So let's bring Josina into the conversation here this afternoon. Josina, what did Adrian tell you about why now and why with the Saints?
Well, essentially, he said it just felt right, Josina. It feels like it's a good fit. And even up to yesterday, he called me and was kind of vacillating back and forth about the decision to go ahead as far as whether to do it before the draft or after the draft. There's also preliminary, interest coming from the still, and that was still in, consideration in the back of his head. But just going back to when he actually made the visit in New Orleans and we talked a few days after that, he was just really enthusiastic about how the club sounded just really giddy about the fact that he was even in the building and the chance that they had at landing him. It's almost like he felt like they didn't think that they could get him because maybe they'd be priced out of acquiring him. But I've been saying all along that Adrian has long adapted to the modification that he was going to have to make in what he was earning based on what he's used to coming from Minnesota. He also said he had an opportunity to research the offense, and he's looking forward to working with Drew Brees and working together with Mark Ingram. So all in all, I think that he sees it as an opportunity to still be productive and work with a good offense.
All right, Adrian Peterson, Drew Brees, by the way, combined 17 Pro Bowls. That is a most by a quarterback-running back duo. Since the merger, we heard a little bit with Josina saying he was vacillating between now or after the draft. To you, Mark, why was this a get-it-done-now deal?
I think for the player and probably for the agent, it was your highest leverage point. Because if you go to the draft, you obviously know that if 2 or 3 teams you're considering are going to go in the running back market and 2 of those teams end up drafting a running back, you just lost a lot of leverage with New Orleans. So I think it's a smart play by Adrian Peterson and his agent to go ahead and get this deal done and put it in place ahead of the time so they already know. And I think it's big for the Saints, too, because I think now they could have that position solidified going to the draft saying we can focus in other areas completely.
Like defense.
A lot of it.
A lot of defense. A lot of defense for New Orleans. When you looked at this deal, Bill, what was your reaction to it?
Well, I thought it was a good deal for Adrian. Probably a little bit better than I might have expected that he would get. He's a player who hasn't played football in 2 years. He's at an advanced age for a running back. He's a player that has low odds of success, and that's what general managers look at in terms of how much you pay him. So he got a pretty decent deal. 3.5 guaranteed is nice. He'll have a circumscribed role as a backup to Ingram, very probably. And we'll see how he does. Limited carries will probably help him in the long run. And it's a great offense to be in, obviously. So it's a win-win for both parties.
How do you see him fitting there?
Look at the way Tim Hightower was used there last year. You could see Adrian Peterson getting something in the 130, 150 carry range, even if they continue to lean on Ingram as the number 1 back. Saints ran the most plays of any team in the league last year, so there's plenty to go around down there. He won't be on obvious passing downs. He's not as good a pass protector as Ingram is. He doesn't operate well when the offense runs out of the shotgun. There are certain specific aspects of the offense that he fits and doesn't fit. But you do trust Sean Payton, creative and excellent offensive play caller, to design and figure out ways to maximize a player like this.
And I kind of they're looking at Dallas a little bit, meaning Dallas had to find a way to kind of slow the game down so their defense wouldn't be on the field too much. And I think that's what the Saints are trying to find a way to maybe, instead of having all those offensive plays Dan just talked about, limit the game time so your defense may not be on the field as much, so you maybe aren't as exposed until you can get enough players on that side of the football field.
It's a very good point. Sean Payton's a Bill Parcells disciple. Parcells is a proponent not only of power football, but slowing the game down and giving your defense a chance to rest. And in Bill's case, obviously, had a great defense. In this case, they have a burgeoning and building defense, they hope.
All right, let's look at how he's fared against NFC South rivals in his career. Adrian Peterson did well against the Falcons and the Bucs. Panthers, they've been a little bit better when it comes to holding him in check. Overall, against those three teams, Peterson has averaged nearly 5 yards a game in his 5 yards a carry, I'm assuming, in his career. So you kind of see what he's done there. Do you have to temper the expectations just a little bit, given this is a Hall of Fame player, obviously? But is it fair to say that we're not going to see the Adrian Peterson of old in a Saints uniform?
I think you have to temper expectations an awful lot. I mean, I think that at age 32, running backs, don't always, or very rarely actually, are productive to the extent that Adrian Peterson ever was. So, yeah, he's going to be a role player for them. If Mark Ingram were to get hurt and they had to start Adrian Peterson for a few weeks, given his history as a unique and special player, could you see him doing something special? Yes. But to go into it with that expectation, I think would be a mistake at this stage of his career.
Here's the problem. Workload is the problem, because the heavier the workload, for example, if he had to step in and be the guy for 3 or 4 weeks, the much greater the chance of injury at his age. And don't forget, he's had 2 major injuries. So that's the thing you worry about. And when you do the contract, you're thinking, how much of this contract is going to be on injured reserve?
Right.
I mean, that sounds crass and cold, but that's the world we live in. Right. So with a lightened workload, you probably get the most out of him. If he has to carry the load, the odds of injury are really, really high.
All right, so we see Adrian Peterson headed to New Orleans. We see that Gillislee is headed to New England after the Bills didn't match that offer sheet. You have like Garrett Blount, who's still sort of floating out there, doesn't have a team. Jamal Charles is unsigned. Where do things stand with Blount at this point in time?
He's still waiting. The New York Giants have had some interest in him throughout the free agent process, but I understand that there's nothing imminent there. They're probably at this point waiting to see what happens in the draft. If they get a running back that they like at some point in the draft, and then maybe they decide they don't need to go get LeGarrette Blount, and vice versa. If they don't get a running back, maybe talks rekindle next week. And I think that's, he's a guy that they have their eye on as a power guy that complements Paul Perkins and Shane Vereen and the other guys that they have in the backfield. Jamal Charles is a guy who's out there. Yeah, Green Bay makes sense. Tampa Bay makes sense, teams like that. But again, Green Bay's probably going to address running back in this draft. So how effectively do they do that? How early do they do that? How ready is whoever they get to play? And do they get in the market for a veteran back depending on those results?
Jamal Charles' situation is very different than Blount's. Mm-hmm. Blount can come in and play right away. And the Giants are perfect for him, because he's a guy who can slam, bang, and get in there and do the heavy-duty work that the other guys they have cannot. In Jamal's case, you don't know how healthy he is. You don't know what he's got left after 2 major knee injuries. It's sad, but that's a fact of life. So they're two different things. The other thing with Blount is kids coming out of the spread, running backs, don't really know how to run in the National Football League. So you might say to yourself, unless I'm getting one of those real great natural runners that are in the first and second rounds, or I'm getting a guy like the Wyoming kid who's been in a slam bang downhill offense, I might be better served to go with the veteran.
Yeah, I think the one thing you sit there and say is it's a game of gambling right now, because the players and the agents and the clubs are all trying to decide when do you pull the trigger and when is the right time to do a deal. So with LeGarrette Blount, certainly he's got a big debate right now. Is it better to do it pre-draft, or do I wait? And if the Giants don't get anybody, now do I have? So it's always a game of leverage and trying to figure out when's the right time to do a deal. But I think, like Bill does and Dan, LeGarrette Blount will have a home, but I think it'll be after the draft.
What's the deal with Marshawn Lynch out in Oakland?
Well, that's a totally different story, because there's only one team involved, and it's the Raiders, and he has to come to some kind of agreement with them on compensation before Seattle can figure out what to do in terms of releasing him or trying to trade him to the Raiders. So my understanding there is it hasn't gone smoothly with Lynch and the Raiders in terms of money, that it wasn't until very late in the process that he confronted the reality that he's not just going to come out of retirement and make his $9 million that he's scheduled to make on the contract. And the Raiders are trying to convince him, yeah, you know, there are ways you're going to make some money. In fact, they've done some research on if his jersey sales would be in the top 10, what would his royalties be on that? You know, a Marshawn Lynch Raiders jersey would probably be a big seller. So they're trying to go at him with that kind of stuff, like, hey, we're going to pay you veteran minimum plus incentives, but look what else comes with it. And those are the discussions that are going on now. They've said publicly.
Marshawn is doing this.
Because he doesn't have to play. Like, I mean, he's enjoying retirement. So he has some leverage, which is, well, I'll just sit home, and I was having a good time anyway.
It'll be interesting to see how all that shakes out, and really how the market shakes out once everything on the draft board starts moving come Thursday night. All right, still ahead. We promised that he would be here, and yes, he is going to join us next. Alabama linebacker Reuben Foster on the draft build-up, expectations, and what he has learned. There he is, hanging out in the studio, chatting with him right after this.
Took a lick from Foster. And another sack by Reuben Foster. The speedy Reuben Foster. You can't do it any better than that.
Hear the battle cries. I'm surprised. They're still sleeping. Savage wildlife. Coming to the game. Coming to the game.
Nick Saban's always talking about how he wants an alpha dog leading his linebacker core. And I think that's exactly what Reuben Foster emerged as this past year.
Alabama product, Reuben Foster. Look, I got greeted with a hug today. You still got the smile on. How's the day going?
It's going very great, man. I'm meeting people like yourself, and it's a great opportunity.
All right, so you're 2 days away from the draft officially beginning. What's been the most memorable moment of this entire process for you, Reuben?
Just the flying and just meeting new coaches and just meeting new teammates or whatever. Well, future teammates, possible future teammates. But it's a great experience.
Let's talk about the pre-draft process, because it's had some challenges for you. Most recently, of course, that positive on the diluted test from the combine. What happened?
Week prior to the draft, became sick and throwing up, trying to stay hydrated. And the coaches worrying about the weight. I was 223, 224 going into the combine, and I wanted to impress the coaches and make sure I played a part. So I was drinking water, and I was still down in water, but it just wasn't the diluted sample. Just had to end up on that. I had to make my weight. I wanted to make my weight. That's why you see that 229 on the board too. So it was more than just, you know, being sick as well.
So you feel like part of it was the pressure of wanting to hit a number that people expect you to hit in terms of that weight?
Yeah, that too.
What do you say to people who are like, I don't know if I buy the story, right? I mean, there's going to be someone saying that somewhere.
Somewhere out there, somebody going to be saying that. But, hey, everybody got their own opinion. All I have is my word, and that's all I got. So I can't be like, hey, please believe me. Please believe me. Hey, I have my word.
This comes off of course, having to leave the combine because of the incident at the hospital. What happened there?
Just an altercation, but hey, I apologize to the doctors and the head nurse, even the nurse I even got in an altercation with. But that being said, I've never got in trouble at the University of Alabama, never failed the test at the University of Alabama, and I never got suspended for a game for the University of Alabama. That should say a lot.
What have teams asked you in the lead up? What's the toughest question that you've gotten from teams?
That's a hard question to ask. It's numerous. Everybody got they thing, their opinion. But probably, I have no idea.
Is there anything specific that comes to mind? What have you heard?
All of it been the same character issues from the combine. Everything pretty much been the same.
When you think about this entire process, what would you say the single biggest thing that you've learned is, Reuben?
I learned that you can't let your mouth, get in the way with your job or what you need to do or what job you need to handle. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to have got discipline from that whole altercation at the combine, and just take everything not for granted. Take everything and be appreciative of everything you get and every chance you have.
What's the best piece of advice that you've gotten?
Stay grounded, stay humble, love all. Like my uncle said, stay grounded, for real, humble. That's pretty much.
You need people like that. You need people like your uncle to be in your ear, right? That's important.
That's important. Family is important. Respecting is important too.
Teams also, of course, probably asking questions about your health and how things are there. The recent Twitter picture that we can put up, just recovering, of course. The ultrasound on the shoulder there. How's that going?
Oh, it's going great. OTAs, I'll be limited, and from training camp, I'll be full go, full throttle. I can't wait. I wish I can go now. You want to go, Tom?
He's ready to go. All right, well, speaking of that, let's take a look at this. Draft experts at this point, this is where Ruben looks set to go. And, of course, that means we talk about Mel and Todd. Mel has him going 15. Todd McShay, who's yelling from the other side of the studio here, he has him going at 17 to Washington, and he's with us here now. And it's too late, right? I like the way Todd sets it up. You got some tape you can break down for us here.
I do. I've done enough talking this week. I think it's time for you to do it. I just decided I want you to break down this tape and show me. I can pause it wherever you want. I can rewind it. But I can tell you on this first play, you probably don't know if you remember the specific plays, but just I want to know what you read, how you got there, and then with the take-on skills, how you approached it technique-wise.
Oh, right now we in mint front right now.
What's that mean?
We got 2 4-eyes and a 0 nose.
Yep.
So 4-eye. Normally we'd be in flex front. This blue offset tight end. He look like he's coming back. He's looking towards my way. So
you're picking up on his eyes right here.
Yeah, I'm picking up on his eyes. He's giving me a read.
I like that. All right. Now play starts. Tell me when to pause it.
All right, it's counter.
Yep.
As soon as his eye.
The offensive line's going this way, so that's your initial read, but then the secondary read is?
These two guys right here. So I read a triangle, but the back is deep, offset from the quarterback.
Yep.
So it's got to come downhill, and the guard give it away as well as the tight end. So it was a pretty much easy read from there.
And so you were in position here, and then tell me about the take on.
Oh, okay. I gotta go inside. I gotta spill the ball so this linebacker right here can come over top.
Yep.
And fill in the hole from Miko fitting outside.
Yeah. So you have to spill it inside here so he can come over. The top.
Yes, sir.
And that's why you do what you do. And then tell me about how the finish.
Oh, the finish. Oh, just be a dog. hey, you gotta control your box.
All right, here's another one. This one, if I remember correctly, in coverage. Take a look. We can rewind it after.
Okay, yes, we playing man.
Yep.
The safety went down right. He have the tight end.
Yep.
We should have a rat in the box, and he's pretty much blitzing.
He's blitzing. Are you covering this guy if he goes?
Yes. This is my guy. This is my guy. But
then you
nobody have this guy coming around because the rat's supposed to cut, but I just felt him coming across, so I had to get him.
That's what I thought, because when I watched this, I said, he's got responsibility on this back, and for him to feel this guy coming and to make the reaction, you can watch at home now, the reaction he has just sensing the receiver coming underneath.
And plus the and you're winding back for me, please.
Yep. I like this. This is a lot better than me doing it.
And plus, you got to realize that he already accepted him as a blitz.
Yep.
So he's out of the equation.
He's staying in, right?
Yeah,
so now you drop into coverage your secondary responsibility on that play.
Yeah, it's like 48.1 funnels. He's on the money backer, who we call money.
Yep.
He got the point guy. So he's blocking. He's on the bell, so he can green dog. So he's coming to ground. He's green dogging, what we call it, to the quarterback, which is a blitz for a running back.
Yep.
Once he's blitz, he got that blitz. So I just knew automatically I can green dog or I can just take him. But so
and you make the interception if you don't have a club on your hand, right?
Yeah. I had about like 10 breakups. I'll lead them.
I know. I saw so many of them when you're looking on. Like,
I'm mad at my hand.
Appreciate it, man. That's good stuff.
Thank you, bro. Thank
You know what I noticed? As soon as he puts the play up and you start talking about it, you have this huge grin on your face. You can just see the love that you have for the game, and once you start breaking it down and talking about it. Listen, good luck to you.
Thank you.
We wish you the very best wherever you wind up, and, you know, Todd says it's going to be better than 17, so.
Sorry. Hopefully top 10.
Thank you,
Good luck,
brother.
man.
Thank
Good luck
you,
to
brother.
you.
Let's see
Todd's hanging around. Look at this. I got another hug. I love it. All right, Ruben, thanks for stopping by. 2 other guys expected to hear their name called early. There is a but. The if factor in the draft starting just 2 days from today. We're back after this. We are so close. 38th straight year NFL draft coming your way on ESPN. And of course, this time it is from Philadelphia, city I know, city I love. They will be ready. No question about that. All 3 days of the draft presented by Courtyard, also streaming live on the app and watch ESPN. All right, so there's plenty of depth, and there's also a lot of question marks, the ifs in this draft, if you will, 2 defining characteristics. How does this draft compare with the others that you've seen over the course of the years, Bill?
There's a lot more ifs in this draft, medically, character-wise, even production-wise, than most that I've seen during my time in the league. Let's concentrate on the medical for the moment. In the first round alone, Jonathan Allen has arthritic shoulders. That means at best he's going to have to be managed through practice and games. Malik Hooker, really good safety from Ohio State, great ball skills, great range. He's got 2 injuries. He hasn't run. We don't have any numbers on him, so we can't validate what we see.
Let's talk a little bit about Jonathan Allen, and then we'll keep going on this list. What have you heard in terms of Jonathan Allen? What teams are looking at here, Dan?
I mean, he's a top of the draft prospect on the merits, on the on-field performance. A guy that could go as high as 2nd or 3rd overall if there weren't concerns about the shoulders, but there are concerns about the shoulders. And we've been talking for months about the depth of talent at the top of this draft defensively. If you're looking at Jonathan Allen, you have any concerns about the shoulders, then maybe you do go another way with a safer guy, even if it's at a different position or a same position, maybe a Solomon Thomas, a defensive lineman that could go ahead of him due to concerns like that.
All right, let's bring Todd McShay into the conversation. Todd, right now he's the 3rd player off your board. What's the best and the worst case scenario here for Allen?
Yeah, listen, I think he's one of the 5 best players if you tell me he's cleared medically in this entire draft class. I thought the ceiling, the best case scenario for him would be 3, but I'm starting to think more and more, you know, conversations I have with people in the league that it might be at number 5. So I think Jonathan Allen at 5 could be the best case scenario to the Tennessee Titans. Unfortunate part is there's a big range, I think, with Allen, because if multiple teams that have that need are considering him, look at the shoulders and say, you know what, we just can't pull the trigger, I think the floor could possibly be as low as 17 to the Washington Redskins. So that's a big gap between the 2 picks.
All right. Bill, you mentioned a few moments ago, of course, the safety out of Ohio State, Malik Hooker, surgery on a torn labrum and a hernia. So the if that you're trying to get your hands around as a GM there?
Well, you have no numbers. You can't validate what you see on tape. This is old-fashioned scouting before we had the combine, when you had to go by I'm old enough to remember when that happened, when you had to go by the eyeball test and interviewing him and seeing him in practice. But it's really difficult. A number of general managers I've talked to said, how do I make this pick? We're making it blind. We don't know. You're going to probably have a prognosis on how he's coming along with the injuries, although the labrum is a little bit worrisome. But you don't have any numbers. You don't know how fast he runs, how quickly he turns, how explosive he is. It's a tough pick to make.
Yeah, you would like to have all those pieces. I think the nice thing about Malik Hooker is the tape is so good. I mean, when you really watch this guy just on the field and across the board, you see the ball skills. I see speed. I see range. I see enough of a tackler that I feel pretty good about where that is. One of the good things about it, but Bill's right. I mean, this is always an if situation because you're talking to your doctor saying, if I take him, what happens? But I sit there and say, a hernia, I can survive. I think we both could say that's not the big deal. The labrum, at least it's nothing a little bit. It can be significant, but those, usually are done properly. heal properly.
He's essentially a one-year college player.
Yes, that's the big if.
And the 2 injuries in 1 year in college is also a little worrisome.
Durability.
Yeah, durability, yes. For a guy who was formerly a basketball player.
Floor and ceiling, if you will, Todd, for Hooker?
The issues, too, for Hooker is that Jamal Adams, this is a unique class. You've got 2 players in the top 10 in terms of grades on tape at the safety position. So teams like San Francisco, Chicago that are looking at the safety spot could wind up going Jonathan Allen, and then Malik Hooker with the durability issues. Different players, but both of the same position. I think probably 6 or 7 Jets, Chargers to me is best case scenario. I want to say 7 is the worst case scenario, but I'll give you a range just in case things go really poorly. I really do not believe this is the case. But 19 to Tampa Bay I would see as the absolute parachute pick. But again, I really believe that 6 and 7 are the spots that you look for Malik Hooker when it's all said and done.
All right, then you have his teammate Marshon Lattimore right now rounding out the top 10 for Todd. Hamstrung by the hamstring, if you will.
Well, it's not only hamstring, but surgery on it. So that bothers you. That's a long conversation with the doctors. How much is there going to be residual? Do we have to manage him? Is it going to come back? Those are all questions that you have to get answers. This high in the draft, you want to be able to say he's going to be on the field as a full-time player. Tony Dungy always was the voice of reason. He used to say the most important ability is availability. And if he's not going to be available because he's got chronic hamstring problems, that's an issue.
Yeah, and I look at this player the same way, and I really, again, you love his tape and you like his length, and he's really the best corner in this class, in my personal opinion. But I think the thing with him, again, is the fact that, you know, you're going to do a lot of running in the National Football League. And this is the thing that I don't think a lot of the public understands. The amount of time you spend with your training staff, especially your orthopedic doctor, is exhausting to try to get through this process because their opinion carries a lot of weight, a lot more than I think people realize, whether you're going to pass a guy or push him down on your board just because if you think how much he's going to be able to be managed or need to be managed as an NFL player.
You're putting a lot of faith in that training staff.
Well, the docs, principally.
The docs.
Yeah.
Because it's not uncommon, it's too late in the game now, but early in April when you have the final medical meeting, walk in there and you get a list of people that failed, you go, oh my heavens, this is half our first round. and now you're having long discussions about, can we take him in the second round? Can we take him in the third? What's the prognosis? And each individual club and each individual group of doctors are different.
Everybody does it different.
How could his range be affected come draft night, Todd?
Oh, according to those I've talked to in the league, of all the players we've talked about so far, there seems to be the least amount of concern with Lattimore. Take it for what it's worth. I think you have to take this into consideration as well. The needs of teams at the top of the board and the importance of the cornerback position. I mean, you could argue it's the hardest position outside of quarterback to find a player in the draft that can cover the way Marshon Lattimore can cover. So Sam Fran, the Bears sitting at 3, Tennessee sitting there at number 5, and the Jets at 6, all have a relatively pressing cornerback need among the top 2 or 3 needs. So I think the ceiling is going to be San Francisco for Lattimore, and I think the floor is probably going to be the New York Jets at number 6. I don't see personally him falling out of the top 10.
All right. You know, it seems like Washington wideout John Ross was speeding up the boards thanks to that speedy combine record that he set. But there's a history of multiple surgeries here, so that could certainly slow his departure from the board.
Well, it could. I mean, his size is Marvin Harrison's size, and when you look at the tape, you see some Marvin Harrison in him, the way he runs routes, the explosion, the hands. I mean, it's marvelous. But usually 2 surgeries is enough for some doctors to say, no, we're not going to take him. Or at very least, they'll say, you can't take him in the first round. It's too big a risk. Now you're talking about a little guy on top of, and putting on top of that medical issue. So this is a big, gigantic if as to where you pull the trigger.
You know, we've talked a lot about the lack of consensus about the quarterback position in this year's draft. There's a lack of consensus about, from what I can understand, about those top 3 receivers. There are teams that love John Ross's talent more than the other 2. There are teams that think Mike Williams is the safest, but then there are teams that worry whether he can separate enough at the next level. And of course, Corey Davis, we don't have a 40 time on. So those 3 guys should be the first 3 receivers off the board probably, but it could really be in any order and not be a surprise at this point.
There's always a tumbler. in every draft. A guy that everybody thinks is going to go in the top 5, and he begins to tumble and tumble and tumble and tumble.
Sure.
John Ross is probably a pretty good candidate as the tumbler in this draft because the 2 surgeries are going to cause a lot of doctors to say, whoa, and cause a lot of teams to say, well, we can't take him at the top of the first.
Todd, what do you think about that?
I think he'll be the 3rd receiver taken, but there is a big range here. I think you'll see Mike Williams and Corey Davis off the board first. I think you have to get down past Baltimore at 16. I think 18, the Tennessee Titans, after they make their first pick, assuming it's on the defensive side, likely a defensive back, I think this is probably the ceiling for John Ross. Now, the frustrating part is you look at these teams in the 20s, and I didn't really even put it together till today when I started looking at it. There's not a lot of primary needs for teams in the bottom of the first round at the wide receiver position. A lot of teams looking for edge rushers and cornerbacks. So it wouldn't surprise me if we saw him dip just a little bit into the 2nd round, where I think a team like San Francisco could take advantage of the value there.
Marvin Harrison was number 17.
Little draft history.
Hall of Famer. So,
Yeah.
Who made that pick?
Nice one, McShay. Good job on that one.
But I can.
You mentioned the ifs when it comes to the quarterbacks in this draft. We're going to talk about that coming up. First, a little bit of breaking news. As we told you off the top, Josina Anderson reporting that Adrian Peterson will sign with the Saints. The Saints have made that official and confirmed it. Plus, more McShay. I mean, we can never have enough McShay this week, right?
Todd.
When we come
I'm
back.
loving it, man.
You can head to .com and read from the McShay vault. That's what I'm going with, because it's
McShay
pretty
vault.
much like all the information that you've
Take it.
heard.
For whatever it's worth.
There you go. Take it, use it, do with it what you will. But here's a headline, because you're on the record saying you don't see one of these quarterbacks as a first round pick. But there's a scenario where we could see all 3 of them off the board by the 13th pick.
There is. It's an outside shot, but you never know. The quarterbacks get pushed up. And we'll walk through this and show you. Really, it comes down to, I think, Deshaun Watson. But let's take a look. I'm not buying into any of the information from Cleveland. I just think Myles Garrett, at the end of the day, is the pick, too good of a player, so we're going to go with Garrett at 1. San Francisco, I don't believe they're going to draft a quarterback there. We've heard a lot about Leonard Fournette. I think the safest player in this draft is Jamal Adams. Safety can come in, will fit that system well. They could go, like I said, Fournette, they could go Lattimore, they could go a few different directions, but I think Jamal Adams makes sense at number 2. Now you've got at 3, Chicago. Chicago and Jacksonville have really been the quietest teams, and the quietest teams typically are the ones that scare you the most, because maybe the ones that are talking a lot are trying to send out information. So just something to think about. But I think at this point, Marshawn Lattimore could make some sense. We talked about him before. Somewhere between 2 and 6 is likely for Marshawn Lattimore, the corner out of Ohio State.
We've seen Jacksonville quiet before.
Right. And it got me thinking this morning. I think it was Mike and Mike. I don't know, wherever Adam Schefter was.
Yeah, talking about it this morning.
He was
with
talking
Blake
about it a
Bortles.
little bit this morning, and he's talked about it a few times. And the more I think about it, the thing with Deshaun Watson is that he's the type of guy that will come in and change your culture. And so I just wonder if Jacksonville, with some of the change that they've had as an organization, if they are quietly behind the scenes doing this. I don't know at all. I'm letting you know, honest to God, I know nothing. But that's part of the reason why there could be something there. So let's go with Deshaun Watson as a surprise pick at number 4. Then at 5, you go, I think, defensive back. We've talked all along. To me, you've got, if Adams is on the board, he's a possibility, but we'll go with Lattimore, the cornerback out of Ohio State.
Would Robinson try to move down? We've seen him like to try to hoard some picks there.
He could. He could. I already gave away Lattimore at number 3, so we'll figure that out. But anyway, so moving on, I think at 5, it could be a trade spot where Cleveland tries to move in to go get their quarterback, but let's assume Tennessee stays there and takes a defensive back. I think the Jets are another team looking at quarterback, but I think they go with O.J. Howard, the tight end, and we'll roll through a few of these picks now. I think Malik Hooker makes a lot of sense, the safety, going to the Chargers at number 7. At 8, could be a running back here. We've heard a lot of information about Fournette or McCaffrey. If Fournette's gone at this point, then I think there's a chance that they could go McCaffrey. They could go either way. So I'm going to give him Fournette. He's higher ranked on the board there. At 9, you've got Cincinnati. I think Hassan Reddick could be a little bit of a surprise pick here at linebacker. I think Reuben Foster would also be in the mix. Also in the mix for Buffalo at 10. And I think at 13 is a possibility for Arizona. But now we've got all these guys coming off the board. Christian McCaffrey would have been off the board somewhere else in a move. I think you get down to 11, 12, 13. Defense has got to be the play for New Orleans sitting here at number 11. I think pass rusher and Derek Barnett makes a lot of sense. Then you go quarterback to the Cleveland Browns if they stay home or they decide to move up a little bit to get Mitch Trubisky, who they've been linked to the whole time. And here's where I think the big surprise could come. Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback to Arizona, talked about him in the first round. I don't know that it would be a huge surprise at this point, but I'd go back a month back, I should say, and you think about Pat Mahomes being a top 13 pick. Just to me, it would have been a big surprise at that point, but I've heard a lot of noise about Arizona loving this guy, as many people do, because you just can't coach some of his physical ability. But there's a lot of work to be done, and that would be a great place for him behind a consummate pro in Carson Palmer, and because you wouldn't have to play him right now.
Right, and of course, Bruce Arians, he likes that arm strength that's going to work well in his system, so there's a natural fit there as well.
So about a 1 in 1,000 chance.
1 in 1,000 chance. All right, there we go. We'll see how it all shakes out. We'll have a million different scenarios between now and when it starts as well. Some of them will shake out tonight on ESPN, 8 o'clock Eastern. Our NFL Nation reporters, they are going to give us their mock draft.
Napoleon's favorite night of the year.
So who do they think the teams that they cover are going to select? That's coming your way later tonight. And yes, so Deshaun Watson, the first one off the board in that scenario that we just discussed when it comes to quarterbacks. Will it play out that way? And what are all the teams trying to get underneath of before investing in the future of their franchise? And press coverage coming our way from Adam Schefter, Jay Cutler's agent Bus Cook telling Shefty that contrary to speculation, his client does not intend to retire. The quote, Jay wants to play football, has never mentioned retirement to me. As far as I know, is ready to play and wants to play, and his skill set is as good as any quarterback in the league. Well, that leads us to two quarterbacks who are waiting to find out where they will play in the league. Mitch Trubisky, Deshaun Watson, largely believed to be the first two quarterbacks off the board. We're talking about ifs today. Not a lot of tape, of course, on Trubisky. What's the if when it comes to him, Bill?
Look, we all see the physical skills. The if is, can you learn to play football at the quarterback position in the NFL after only 13 games at the college level? And some of those, including the last one, were not stellar in terms of reading defenses and decision-making in the pocket and things like that. I think we all agree that Cam Newton is a special guy. Nobody else has made a living with their legs in this league. No quarterback. And Trubisky isn't either. So the bottom line is he's got to learn how to play quarterback. He's got a long way to go. That's the if.
How do you evaluate that kind of if as a GM trying to make the call on the future of your franchise?
Yeah, I think, certainly he's a guy that you bring to your organization and spend the full day with prior to the draft to make sure you get a better sense of how he learns and the way he can retain information. Because to me, in the college, the game is all pre-snap. Everything's happening pre-snap. And how good are you pre-snap? In the NFL, it's how good are you post-snap? And trying to figure out the difference of these young men to say, can they handle and process it is up to the offensive coordinator. It's up to the quarterback coach to make sure they spend the amount of time. And it's also maybe prepping him at the combine when you see him for 15 minutes, maybe give him 4 or 5 plays, never talk about it again. When you invite him back to your facility, you start with those 4 or 5 plays, see if he remembers any of it. It's those little things you try to do to kind of get a sense of how smart the quarterback is. But until they get on the field, it's hard to tell.
It's a big if.
It is a big if.
Let's talk about Watson. He's, of course, shined on the biggest stage at the collegiate level. Great character guy, great leadership qualities. What's the if there, Bill?
Those are all great pluses. The if is, can he transition from a pure spread offense into an NFL offense? Now, he's had a lot of experience, but as Wade Wilson, the quarterback coach of the Cowboys, told me, they don't use their voices at the collegiate level. They don't call plays.
Right.
They don't call audibles. Everything's done pre-snap, and everything's done via hand signals and cards and silent count. So he's got to begin to learn to do that. I've looked at all the tape, and I think the issue of the idea that he's not accurate is kind of overblown. I mean, when you're accurate against Alabama, you're you're pretty darn accurate. So
I agree with that.
That to me is not an issue. How quickly will he? The if is how quickly will he transition to the NFL to be able to play?
I just listening to you guys, I think it's so important. People get so wrapped up in the draft and so caught up, and I'm talking about fans. This is 2 nights from now, and when you think about how little information you really have, relatively, you just talked about Trubisky, 15 minutes at the combine, a day at your facility. That's the time you've spent with him. Is he your franchise quarterback based on that? How can you possibly know? At some point, everyone's taking a flyer, some kind of guess, and I think that's important for fans who watch the draft to try to temper their enthusiasm a little bit and keep that in mind, because
they won't.
This is tough. They won't. I know.
Or the disapproval.
My plea falls on deaf ears.
Utopia reality right there. Deshaun Watson was recently asked about if he's not the first quarterback taken off of the board. Here was his response.
It should speak for itself, but be honest with me. How does it make you feel when you hear names like Mitchell Trubisky associated with the Browns, when you think about the championship resume that you have, and then comparing that to someone who has a body of work that includes 13 starts? I know as people say he's played in a total of 30, but you know what you've accomplished.
Right.
Please tell me, how honestly does that make you feel?
It's like a slap in the face. To be honest, you see all the things I accomplished, and it's a lot of it. You know, the list it's a long list, and they want to talk about the little negatives I have and bring somebody else up. You know, it's a little disrespectful.
That's what we call a tease, because you can hear the rest of Josina's conversation coming your way. Set the alarm, stay up late, early, whatever you want to call it. 1 a.m. Eastern time on SportsCenter. Still ahead here on NFL Insiders. Lots of talk about a move for Richard Sherman. How is that actually impacting his activities in Seattle? We will answer that. Real quick, latest on Richard Sherman.
Back at workouts this week, GM John Schneider of the Seahawks said they've kind of moved past the idea of trading him. Seattle wanted a first-round pick plus. Nobody's met that price. Doesn't seem as if anyone will, and unless they do, I imagine he stays in Seattle.
Yeah, can't be upset to have a player of that caliber on your roster. That's it for us. NFL Live coming your way right now. See ya.